It's so lovely to see everyone chatting and making connections and buying books. Very good. And I didn't even plug the book. It's so beautiful. It just drew everyone to it. Okay, so, and welcome to everyone on Zoom. Hello, my friends. Okay, get myself organized here. So I'm really pleased to be introducing our poetic opener of the evening, Rhonda Ganz. I love Rhonda's poetry so much, and she has one of my favorite titles of a book ever, Frequent Small Loads of Laundry, published by Mother Tongue. Her first collection, Frequent Small Loads of Laundry, won the Relit Award for Poetry. The book was also a finalist for the Dorothy Livesay Prize and the Victoria Butler Book Prize. Her poems have appeared in the Malahat Review, Rattle, Room, Harvard Design Magazine, that's cool, on city buses as part of Poetry in Transit, and many anthologies, the latest being Voicing Suicide. I'm so pleased to welcome Rhonda Ganz. Come around this way. Oh. It's locked. We like to herd our customers towards the tills. That's the height of the mic.
Excuse me. I'm going to do a test with the mic. Does that sound fine to everybody? You can hear me?
No, louder. Oh, here I'll.
Well, I can't speak louder, but I can get it closer to me.
Closer.
All right. Oh. So I do have copies of my book, $15, and I have 2 anthologies from Mother Tongue at $10 each. They came out a few years ago. So back for live reading. It's exciting. Thank you. Nice to see everybody. I haven't been writing over the pandemic, but I wrote a new poem this week. So Wisława Szymborska wrote, "Forgive me, distant wars, for bringing home flowers." And so I thought about that a lot these past few weeks. And I've also thought a lot about what people are capable of doing. So I'll start with a war poem and then I'll light up. Those who are able to, and those who only think about it. My friend from high school keeps a list of names. Corpse fly buzz is just my tinnitus. Neither of us leaves the house much these days, and I'm obsessed with names. The Dardanelles, the Bosphorus. Don't ask me to look farther north, where the Black Sea smacks Zmienia Island cliffs. When a name on my friend's list dies, she spits 3 times, prays their lungs exploded in their last breath with the white heat of phosphorus, the death ring in their ears, her howling accusation. A flight I was on once refueled in Sevastopol. It was 3 a.m. in the 1970s, and Omar Sharif came out of first class to have a smoke on the runway with me. Pull my eye farther north, where my uncle's kin is a corpse on the streets of Bucha, where I stay in bed an extra week for the man shot on his bicycle, his dog not leaving. Golden in its confused grief, half deaf with air rage siren ringing. The bicycle blue. The difference being my friend hissing through her teeth. Give me 5 days alone in a soundproof room with the names on my list strapped to uncomfortable chairs, knowing she could never really, not into flesh, not ever actually deficient in whatever gene, the difference being the end of the world is not a measurable unit of time. Not that you can tell by looking, but neither of us leaves the house much these days. And though we light a candle, we find ourselves unable to fall down on our knees. So I did write postcard poems the first year of the pandemic. There's a lake in Japan that pilgrims go to, and they make a pilgrimage around the lake. Lake Tawada misses you, wishes you were here, wishes water on a pilgrim path was a universal cure. But a lake can't wish beyond its own reflection. Though it misses your face, the lake has no wish but that you were here. Lake Tawada says hello. It misses your voice. You didn't come back this year. You didn't dip your toes in water rushing by. Lake Tawada sighs. It kisses the shore, wonders where the pilgrims are, wonders if a prayer said indoors is slower to reach the sky. I think it's almost time for these to bloom. Before the dragon hatches from his egg, the egg must go through fire. Some forests won't be born until what's green and growing now is lightning struck and burned to ash. The Quamash lily blooms brighter in the meadow the season after your father sets his flame to the tall grasses. We hold out an open hand, sleep the sleep of a crane who sleeps with one leg bent at the knee. There's a postcard poetry project, so these were actually mailed to people. She is somewhere that is not love. I think that's a Wendy Morton line that I stole. She is somewhere that is not love, not even a day in March beside the river. A gardener comes on Thursdays to cut the faded flowers, to trim the grass along the path. If not love, then at least blue sky, cherry blossoms in a vase on her table. And this one is for late summer. Flying ants, late August evening swarm, 1,000 wings on the boards below the glass. A camera is not a mirror is not a portrait, but the ants beating their bodies against a lighted window. I see myself there. And I guess this was fairly newish, some of you may have heard it. It's called When Kaeya Stopped Eating Red Meat. I enjoyed Joyce's poem about space travel. There's a planet in here, it's a minor planet called Vesta. When Kaeya stopped eating red meat. When Kaeya stopped eating red meat, all her hair fell out and grass grew in its place. Kentucky bluegrass on her head, rebel fescue on her legs, paspalum vaginatum in her pits and on her pubes. Her eyebrows were ryegrass and out of control. The more legumes she ate, the darker green they grew. When corkscrew grass sprouted on her nipples, she laughed and bought bigger tweezers. Kaeya took to walking hatless in light rain for the way drops refracted when she took a selfie. Sometimes she let the bluegrass grow tall. A breeze fumbled between thin stems and people followed close to hear what they'd only heard synthesized in relaxation apps. She got used to the biodrome circling above her, adding to its database of 21st century life forms, making a comeback. Kaeya built a tiny push mower made with safety blades. She loved the way the room smelled after she mowed her legs. 1 million people followed her the day after she posted a video of her girlfriend pushing the mower from ankle to upper thigh. Monetizing her oddness, she paid her way through university by letting strangers run their fingers over her head. They could buy a stalk to chew on, or to place between two thumbs and blow. A grass whistle quartet enjoyed momentary fame. Of course, the council recruited her. Outer planetary greenification high on the list for human survival. Kaeya was examined, declared fit for space travel and conditions in the colony. But Kaeya had no desire to move off planet. Not for her, the abbreviated breath and lack of bathtub in outer space. Not for her, the automatic sainthood conferred on anyone taking the one-way trip to Vesta. She agreed to 3 months a year of unfettered growth in simulated zero gravity. Agreed to let graminologists snip their samples and entomologists raise woolly bear caterpillars above her hairline. Kaeya was otherwise wholly content to let herself go to seed, to cycle city byways helmetless and toss her head wildly in hopes that something small and green and alive would take root to remember her by.
Was that not fabulous? Thank you, Rhonda. Unreal. Okay, I'm now very excited to introduce our featured reader of the evening, Tolu Oloruntoba. Tolu was born in Ibadan, Nigeria, and practiced medicine before his current work managing projects for provincial health organizations. His poetry appeared or is forthcoming in Harvard Divinity Bulletin, PRISM International, Pleiades, Columbia Journal Online, Obsidian, the Maynard, and the Humber Literary Review, and has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize. His debut collection of poems, The Junta of Happenstance, was published in spring 2021 by Palimpsest Press and is a finalist for the Governor General's Literary Award for Poetry. He lives in Surrey, BC, in the territories of Semiahmoo, Katzie, and Kwantlen First Nations. And I always like to find a little quote or something extra about the featured reader. And I found this in an interview with Rob McLennan, and Rob asked, "Where does a poem begin?" And Tolu said, "It begins with a stone in the shoe, the stubborn notion." I love that. It's a poem in itself. Please welcome Tolu Oloruntoba. Maybe a little low.
I just
Yeah. Okay.
just
So I can.
the worst thing would be if I close the mic.
It's tough.
Zoe, thank you very much for that introduction. Happy birthday. Thank you for spending your birthday with us, and I hope it becomes a lot more fun after this. You make a lot of good memories from today. To all the poets that read this evening, it's been lovely to just sit immersed in your words. I have missed the communion of poetry live events where we would read poetry with each other and make magic. What's the sound like?
Turn the mic up a little bit. There.
I'm very soft-spoken, so I'll try.
How's that? I'm just trying to make that better. Yeah, better.
People have bought books actually, so I need to.
You're good now. You have the technology. I just turned the mic up.
Thank you. I'll read a few poems, and hopefully I won't bore you too much. So I'll read some poems from the second book called Each One First. I'll read some from the Junta of Happenstance, and I'll read some unpublished poems. Stop me if it gets too boring. Thanks once again. Incidentally, one of the poems I wrote that made it into this book, I wrote last year during a NaPoWriMo. And so, Zoe, please, you can get back on the wagon.
Thank you.
And I hope to see some more of those poems out there. And so this book was written about finches. I wrote it over mostly over like a 6-month period. And then I incorporated some other poems that I'd written over the 10-ish years before that. It was in a weird period of my life when I just lost my job. I had some time to write, and I'd been reading about behavioral interviews. And so this poem is about a behavioral interview. I tried to imagine that from a bird's point of view. Eventually, reading about interviews paid off because I eventually got a job. It took me some months. But anyways, here goes. Describe your interaction with a difficult headwind. You rise against it, pinions the heart valves of a reluctant death, crashing in a drown of blue blood. Your method of staying aloft, palm of a heavy sky on your brow. How you swam, cycled, climbed drafts that were flash flood, then viscid wax, avalanche, then mudslide. Tell me, of the time you had to rely on intermittent and maneuvering flight, a time you faced conflict while stargazing, twirling, flying poor, the contradiction of plumbing bobs. Describe that time. You struggled to build a burrow, to vole through tracts of sky, a tunnel that wouldn't collapse. Discuss your praxis, memory movement. If Earth were a pond with landmarks, lily pads that brought you here for the way back, how did you bank, twirling bags of drag and locomotion? What was memorable on your trips from one cage stack in a cul-de-sac to the next? We all make mistakes we wish we could take back. Haven't leached your bony calcium for eggshells. Do you wish you'd held some back? Describe a time you showed leadership of your flagging apparatus, motivating your team of body and will into violent assembly. You saw a problem. You took the initiative to consist, cohere. Tell me about a time you failed. What lessons did you learn about the transactional conviviality of captive flocks? How did you learn not to mistake the dancing, the undulating flight of your flock for a party, a family? They parted for predators and you fell in ornithopter to earth. In a time when you were under a lot of pressure, tell me about a time you set a goal for yourself, how you achieved it. What I really want you to tell me is how you grew your red mask once more, renewing your fight against the fall. Elementary divination. Yeah, this is the one I wrote last April, and I snuck it in at the last moment because I just wanted it to be in the book. So when I learned to read the dice of ardor, I began to follow other imaginary lines, like the homing animals do. My augury, weak, but showing me the compass sense of red poles that peck at Earth's magnetic field, each point of fire, reading the Oduifa of stars, and writing the sun's position in long exposure worlds. I considered tasseomancy, to divide infinitude. My many coffees had to mean something. The opposite of divination was ignorance, so I joined the Congress of seers dripping wax in water, boiling donkey heads, reading their dinner and aquifers. I practiced Euclidean elicitation, Socratic methodology, double-edged bibliomancy. I considered Falgush, that lurking beneath dark eaves for the drop-in of answers. I studied and trusted the arrangements of my gut. I allowed meteorologists their isobars, criminologists their prints. I let the iron shavings in my blood show the lines beneath everything. Fault line portents, seismic lines, tipping teacup shorelines over. The gravity of my wrinkling face, not wasting my sacrifice, I scribed my remains. It all began with the body, I find. The cradle I was hatched in, crucible I was shelled and ground in, the floor I was spread upon, the pestles that conquered my resistance. I want to read my splay, my squirm under the tiger striping whip for clues. I had been ambered in the house where I came of age, and I followed the lines to break myself out. The third one is called Double Barred. It's for the double barred finch that has double bars. Begin here. I'll need brutal strength. Here's to the illness keeping me through the night. I hear that if I take up from now, writing on toilet paper, in diarrheal spurts, secrets that will keep me lighted in jail, learn to ink walls with blood, the confidence of mnemonic homebrew tattoos, the man might not die in me. Prisoner prophets, Wale, Martin, Kanuli, gird me, prepare me. I read on Ratushinsky's poem books, match stakes for the soap, burned to the mind, evidence given to a bathroom's bunghole, comfort me. Look, Chang Chaolin and Hu Feng also shanked poems in hundreds onto their brains. I want prison too, where prison of pill to brave. I take that tonic, vindication in a box, a coward's initiation into the far-flung archipelago of conscience. Gift me then with shackles, but give me a pen. As Zoe introduced, I grew up in Nigeria, and at some point in the mid-90s, another in a long line of dictators took power in Nigeria. His name was Sani Abacha, so I refer to him in this poem. And Ken Saro-Wiwa, the activist, the Ogoni activist, was executed under trumped-up charges and so forth, with other compatriots. And so this is about that. And at some point in 1998, Sani Abacha died under mysterious circumstances. People say it was the CIA. No one cares. All we cared about was that he was dead. And it was a carnival. It was like a party the day he died, and everyone was able to heave a sigh of relief and took to the streets and rejoiced. For once, he made us happy. In the weeks after Saro-Wiwa and the others of the Ogoni Nine were hanged by Abacha on Royal Dutch Shell, the hush was heavy, as can happen when a sample of the country is hanged. Their noses specifically, had been made a bugle, an alarm order. You imagined yourself levitating above ground, or finding your pain unbearable, eyes yolking over cheekbones from straining against the ropes around, the sand-filled drum behind, spectators on the beach, and the drafts couple billets have let into your chest, or ordered down by the military administrator's men, disposed of in a field. Knowing the parcel that made express mail of Deligia's handsome pieces and Kudarat's Swiss-cheesed car, it was not difficult to choose quiet, to risk only allegory if one felt brave. As if obeying the inappropriate graffito of my school, Ken Saro-Wiwa's zone, no hanging around, please. We shuffled along, back to the penumbras of silence round our hurricane lanterns, their sooty chimneys the apex, the cloud of carbon above dissident prayers. Yes, we prayed for him to die. Our circumspect pleas, a temperature only to tyrannize, no. Mouthpieces of network news inflated his hubris, our rage nightly. Juntas made trumpets, wheezing whistles of our nooses. The alarm exhaled, exploding into street parties when finally he was killed for us. I forgot to say the title of the poem. It's called Bucanitis. It's ancient Greek for trumpet. It's one of the finches I read about in this book. Zoe, once my time is done, just kick me out of here. This is called Brimstone. It's written after the Brimstone Canary, which has a bright yellow-green sulfur-like appearance. It's a really striking bird. December 31, 2010, Beebe, Arkansas, beg your pardon. 5,000 birds fell from the sky. stunned by the concussive boom of our fireworks and countdown, the wall of light and sparks, and successive flinches, collisions, a nuclear fission within migrating flocks. Or perhaps it was electromagnetic force fields, think under the dome, or weapons tests by the government. Whatever it was, we're the doomsday of birds. On the train wrecks of cities, a new evolution, genes squirm out of the way, out of our microplastics, rodenticides and the leprous fingers of our glass spires, the lengthened beak, the Velcro toes, shrunken or exploded haunts, the ability to trick the bird feeder, beckon what we must do about the poison of our fellows. And Rhonda, thanks again for the bird pendant. It was a very nice touch. Thank you. I love your poems. And I will be getting your book. Oh, you have it here tonight. That's great. Yes. All right. The next poem is called Five Eyes. I wrote it after Langston Hughes. It has a similar poem in which he says, "I too am America." The Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance is an alliance that Canada is a part of with the United States. I suddenly can't remember anything, but there are 5 countries. I too am America Ferrera in Ugly Betty, a Teflon face they slide over. Have seen also at my fulcrum a lack of plenty, a want for grease, and think of the godlike intelligence analysts sampling our direct messages for compliance. I pray for no visitation of their liberating angels, having suffered enough paternalistic ransackings at the KGB hour, looking for things amiss. Let them glance me, the dowdy other, over as I brace my teeth for skins of persimmon with a star of permission to hit. Seven. No, this is the 7th poem. But the poem is called Ooh. It's about an extinct Hawaiian finch. And so it's a found poem. I found phrases on different web pages that mention the bird and just threw them all in here, because why not? Or critically endangered, or extinction probability, or scientific consensus, or historical range, or every effort, or less than 10 years, or food resources, or predation by introduced mammals, or foraging areas, or begging juveniles, or directly observed, or continuing decline in area, extent, and or quality of habitat, or warranted change, or natural disasters, or remaining population, or seasonal outbreaks, or invasive species, or habitat loss, or storms and flooding, or lava flow, or great distances, or population trend, or generational length, or continuing decline of mature individuals, or evolutionary radiation, or controlling the spread, or greenback. I promise I'm not reading every poem in the book. Weaver. Frantic, we pecked applications in the silt, amputated limbic snares, gave eyes in Hammurabic discipline before we could see gleams in the dirt and reach. Smelted sand banks into the Euphrates with supplicant rubs to become a monolith, whistled and abstinent. So when the last figures, warring with pigs, the igneous trajectories within fell in sweat or death, we picked them gentle, shielded with a rain-marked welcome, the cars carrying shame fartheringward. Through the bricolage around the millennial glacier we clocked with clues as we slipped in. Today, the old fort descends with the ice sheet, meltwater combing the screes. Weaver birds have gone with the wheat. We are woken from cryostasis by the crunch of absence, the clay feet alluvial beside us on the plain. After Marshall marches downhill with the phantasm made seed, the broken tree, the new tools of refuge. This poem is called Disorganized Attachment. It's another of the ones I wrote last April. Sensing a trend. I survived the old country, but at what cost? Ibadan had fireflies, but little light pollution, and finches I had no names for on the telegraph wires crossing the street, choreographing traffic, resting from flight. I have not seen Orion's belt since I left, and seen finches only in the glass jars of conservatories. But why did I nightmare being back there at the old job? What do I remember of binding the infirmities of the body? What shall I do with the handballs of hope they present to me? Touched little as a child except to be struck. My partner cannot understand why I cannot endure tickles. I flinch at the caress, but finally understand I will not have control of my body taken again. I thus understood the hardness of Halo's Master Chief, who took off neither armor nor helmet. His skin must have chafed under. Air would have raked its lower incisors over any exposure with the mentholated treachery of Rob. He, perpetual veteran, would have longed for touch, but been unable to suffer it. Disorganized at the border of safety danger, I have never been able to lay down for love. Forgive me. Don't touch me. Don't leave me. Portrait. Excuse me. I'm almost swallowing the microphone. I think I should step back. Portrait of the artist as Goldian chick in free fall from the nest. To say I lived a sheltered life also means I was sheltered from safety, from hands that could have saved me from the barbed crown of his nest. I was protected from leaving, from other comforts but the soft between trampling talons. I stabbed myself with the edge of escape. I have, by now, fallen halfway across the planet. I will myself heavier, farther away from the keen calling me back. In the percussion of air currents, Ayan searches the talking drums beside my eyes with a tritonic song for me, which I would bear had I not slashed my skins, had I not drawn shades over my nictitating membranes, had I repeated the chants prepared for me, had I aimed upward instead, the shotgun blast at my feathers. Then I'll read a couple of few poems. They threw out a couple. This one is called Armada. We're not going anywhere. If we were, the towers we build against heaven, idling like rockets receiving coolant or fuel, would have taken us to new worlds. Towers must be the answer. The reason God famously said, "Let us bust their union." Our babble is fading away at last. We all speak American now, in these unclear silos, subdued by the reptilian screams of espresso machines. Cometh now a new Nimrod to captain our ships, to find God for us in an evening stroll elsewhere, and ask them some questions. Shelter. There was a ridiculous contest or a struggle a few years ago when some people were trying to invent the whitest white paint and the blackest black paint and so on and so forth. We have invented the whitest white paint, a shine to repel the witness of sun. Soon it will adorn townhouse complexes on boulevards where guillotines of hung windows await the neck. With dollhouse greens and HOA beiges, these are national cakes. And if you believe in such things, also rewards for the faithful. Beach houses are the calcium levees of the excess dead. The resourceful have found use for so many bones that they are now sunk like Archimedes, means that oceans must rise. The new marsh of color-coded pickets will forbid sleep, even with lockjaw skin on the duvet of morning. A penumbra, an after image of tarp and cardboard cities lingers around the opulence. After the pulse that repeals electricity, some of us will still have IKEA train tracks for wood, crayons for candles. In that beginning, foil blankets wrapping meat within, we will wait for the shadow over our shadows to lift off the high thread count of embrace of sleep, hoping to remain space dark behind the taped glass eyes and cheekbone wounds of our estate, safe from our neighbors. Next poem was a found poem that I extracted from a report called Yemen Milk and Honey Farms Limited by prisoners in about 4 detainees in Guantanamo Bay. They created a business report for a business they wanted to start if and when they ever got released. It's available on the internet, but I just drew these phrases from there. Because all hens should be allowed access to the great outdoors, and it is inhumane to keep chicken indoors all the time. Hens running free out of doors on good grass will do very well in the summertime if you just throw some grain, and that is all that we need. Got a few more. Just get me out of there.
Maybe 2 more.
Oh yes, maybe 2 more. Thank you. That's my signal. Because I will just keep reading. So let me pick carefully. I'll just read one, Medical Seances, because of the what's that poem that was read about postmortem. I really didn't like them either. They preserved the bodies with formalin, and it was really hard to stay awake after, morbid anatomy. I really didn't like medical school very much. Anyways, medical seances. Acolytes, we filed into the darkened temple, luminous film of arcana below the false priest at the lectern, casting visions overhead. In the projection, we learned to listen for the murmurs of hearts that wanted to speak, and the dead we did not allow to. Pa James, I was named our cadaver when we used to dissect. He, with the ligature of his hanging still on, was our cadaver. We stripped the gnarly windbreaker of his skin, his fleece of fat, for anatomy. Routinely felled by formalin fumes at night, it was worse later. In morbid anatomy, 2 gleeful residents brandishing sternal saws like bread knives. All the dead could teach was the fear of life and how it can end. Benign sturgeons general, schools in tow swam us past tufted air stingrays, but we drowned still, hydrophobic. Resuscitated after medicine, I remember little but the Latin. An oculus be in the grasp of a brain on stalks. Pick your color. Forgive me, Father. I am not the Esau you sought with a stethoscope beard to make you proud. Had I listened to spirits of dead doctors who named everything after food, bread and butter pericardiums, cafe au lait skin, poma fascis with nutmeg liver on a cribblepom plate, you might have liked the meal I made you. Last one is called Coexist. I lived in a house for much of my childhood that had mice, so we lived with the mice. It was their house. Africans never presume to count another's children, so we don't know how many they had. The family ours moved in with, each sidestepping the other, mostly. Avoidance was respect. Night was their time. The musical clan tap dancing ceiling boards to pipes and winching squeaks from plumbing, chorus stars above, cosmic dust, pointillist and siftous asbestos below. You would go into the kitchen at night for water and see the conspiracy scattering, snooker balls struck by light, darting stragglers huffing for the pocket hole. Easy, having nibbled their doors under ours, thoroughfare through the house and gourmet gougings of bread, each mousehole ornate. Losing their shyness, we occasionally met at dusk, Their whiskers tightrope lances, measuring the abyss of air on either side, sifting our intention, teaching the resonance of mice, while the world continues to build ours at the edge, to wrench our microcosm from potential space. Thank you so much for listening.